Warning: this DVD contains information that will teach you how card games can be cheated. Though the primary focus is on the game of Texas Hold'em, these cheating techniques can be used in all card games. The sole purpose of this DVD is to educate you about the many ways the game of poker can be compromised. It is not intended to teach you how to cheat. On the contrary, this information is being presented to you so you, the player, can protect yourself from being a victim. The fact is, more cheating takes place in private games than anywhere else, and when money is involved, the likelihood of you being cheated grows with each and every game you participate in. Watching this DVD and implementing the protection tips will make it harder for a cheater to take advantage of your game. Though no one alive is immune to being cheated, this information will help you ensure fair, honest, clean play that can be fun for all involved. If you decide to try and use this information to cheat the game you play in, consider yourself warned. Even the best hustlers in the world get caught. There are no exceptions. These days, getting caught could cost you more than your bankroll. It could, in some cases, cost you your life. So be smart. This DVD has been released for entertainment purposes only. Double George LLC and David Malek cannot be held liable for any consequences resulting from the misuse of any information contained herein. Hello and welcome to Cheating at Hold'em. I'm David Malek, and for the next hour I'll be your guide into the shrouded world of the professional card hustler. There's a lot of information ahead, and I've tried to make the terminology as simple and as user-friendly as possible. If you find you don't understand something, you can always go back to the beginning of a segment and review it as many times as necessary. It took a lot of effort to bring you this program, so I hope you enjoy it, learn from it, and use the information to protect yourself from being cheated. Cheating at cards is a vast and fascinating subject. With the popularity of Hold'em poker taking the Western world by storm, just the mention of the word cheating raises eyebrows. There are many misconceptions with regard to the way cheating takes place at the card table. In many ways, advantage play is far more complicated than you think, and in many ways, far easier than you might be led to believe. Regardless, there are many elements to cheating at Hold'em. We are going to start off with a section on marked cards. Here you will learn about the most popular ways cards can be marked, where the marks are typically located, as well as how to detect them. Next, we will expose the stripper deck and how its odd shape can be used to control any combination of cards at will. We'll then move on to what a legitimate deck looks like as it comes from the factory. Detecting marks is not easy. However, once you know how normal cards are packaged, spotting discrepancies becomes much easier. Peeking is a way of secretly glimpsing the identity of a card or cards. You will learn many different methods and protection tips. We will also touch on the subject of flashing. Like peeking, it's the concept of secretly showing a confederate or partner a card's value. From here, we'll take a look at the false dealing technique known as the second deal. We'll go over the various ways the deal can be executed, as well as practical game applications. Next, we'll talk about the interrelated nature of scams, and we'll delve into the reasons why certain scams are dependent upon one another for success. We will also take a look at check copying and how easily this scam can steal money from pots, as well as an easy solution for stopping it. Splash moves, or building in, are mainstays of the card hustler. You'll learn what to look for and how to help curb it. Next, we'll take a look at different gambling devices used to cheat games today and in times past. You may find this section incredible. The lengths hustlers will go to invent devices to take your money are fascinating. In our last two sections, we'll concentrate on the proper and optimal way to shuffle, deal, and use the cut card, as well as the safest way to look at your hole cards and why you might be better off using chem or plastic cards in your game. Finally, we'll touch on how and what to do if you suspect or see someone cheating in your game or at a game you play in. Marked cards are responsible for stealing more money than any other cheating method ever devised or invented. The marking systems and methods you're about to learn are the most common, and consequently the most likely to be used against you. Please remember that we're showing you where to look and what to look for. Furthermore, we're decoding the marks for you. In some instances, for exposé purposes, the marks have been exaggerated to facilitate your understanding. You may think that there's no way these marking systems can get by you. Make no mistake. If you don't know exactly where to look and what to look for, even the simplest marking system can easily deceive you. Marked cards were born the first time a player noticed a discrepancy between one card and another and used this information to his advantage. Since then, entire businesses have been built supplying crooked gambling equipment to hustlers and those that wanted to take advantage of people they played with. Here is a catalog from one of these gaming supply houses which up until the year 2000 was still in business. The cornerstone of all these operations was marked cards. Listed here as readers and more commonly known as paper, we see a page from a catalog showing 7 different areas where the back of a B brand card can be altered. Here is yet another page illustrating the various ways many different popular back designs, such as bicycle and tally-ho, can be marked. The lesson here is that no card is immune to being tampered with. Unfortunately, that even means the ever-popular plastic cards used in casinos and card clubs. Here we see a photo of the various chemicals and devices used in the marking process. This is a small portion of a much larger collection from a well-known gambling supply house. It is made up of hundreds of chemicals, dyes, brushes, and filters, costing thousands of dollars. What chemicals to use on what cards? How the chemicals are applied, the marking systems for various games, the different shades of each color, and the various colors of cards from around the world pose a serious learning curve for anyone interested in becoming a master of the subject. Marked cards can be broken up into 2 main categories: cards marked before play and cards marked during play. Let's begin with the most common methods of marking cards before play. Blockout work. Marked cards using what is known as blockout work are the most common types you are likely to run across. They make up the meat and potatoes of the marked card world. Blockout work marks the cards by extending part of the printed design. Various styles of blockout work also have different names. Depending on where the cards are marked, it may be called scroll, brace, border, or even dot work. Let's take a look at what are known as enlarged diamonds. The enlarged diamond is specific to B brand cards. Before we actually expose where the marks are, take a second and see if you can spot them on your own. I've already told you that the type of work is the enlarged diamond. Let's drill down and take a closer look at the actual mark. Do you see it now? What if we toggle back and forth with a card that is not marked? Can you see it now? If you still cannot see it, let's highlight the area to make it easy. Do you see how the upper left-hand facet of the diamond has been extended with matching blue ink? As you may have guessed, the order in which the marks are placed denotes the value of the card. For example, running down the left side of the card from the top down, we have the ace, then king, queen, jack, 10, 9, and finally the 8. Then across the top, we have the 7, 6, 5, 4, and finally the 3. With some marking systems, the deuce is left untouched. The facets of the diamonds that are enlarged give us the suit information. If the upper left-hand facet is extended, it denotes a club. If the upper right-hand facet is extended, it denotes hearts. And, continuing in a clockwise direction, the lower right-hand facet with spades, and the lower left-hand facet denoting diamonds. It is also important to note that these marks are duplicated in the opposite diagonal corner, thereby making the card symmetrical. Keep in mind that each cheat will have his own system and code for marking the cards. Also remember that the cards need not be marked exactly as shown here, but can be marked in many different areas as well as in various different combinations. Sometimes only one mark is used to differentiate the high cards from the low ones. Now that you know what the marks look like with this specific system and where they are located, let's take a look at one more card and see if you can spot the mark, value, and suit. Do you see it? Based on this marking system, if you guessed this card to be a 4, and specifically the 4 of diamonds, you were right. Here are a couple of exaggerated variations of blockout work as they are applied to the B back. Do you see how just widening the lines can create a mark? First with one line, and now blocking out a small section. Now that you understand what blockout work is, let's take a look at it as it applies to other back designs such as bicycle. Here we see the corner of a bicycle rider back card that is unmarked. If we now toggle to the marked version, you can easily see where the card has been marked. Marking bicycle in this area is known as scroll work. Let's look at one final example of the bicycle card. This time both the marked and unmarked cards are together. Can you see the difference in the two cards? Look closely and you will see that the petals of the flowers on the lower card have been blocked out. This is yet another of literally a dozen or more areas where these cards can be marked. Instead of extending the darker part or the printed design of the card, in some cases extending the white parts or background can create the same effect, just in reverse. Here we see the back of a steamboat card, first unmarked and now marked. Do you see how the center white portion of the flower has been made larger? In comparison to the other marks in this section, this is representative of how subtle a professional mark of this type can be. Hustlers who are accustomed to working with marked cards like this can instantly spot these tiny marks from across the table or while dealing. Humps are another method used to mark cards. This system is typically used with white border cards or on cards with a logo. Here is an unmarked World Poker Tour card, and now the same card with a hump on the border. Much like the B's in large diamonds to denote value, humps begin at the top with aces and move down the side in descending values. Sometimes suits are marked by placing humps on the top border. The same technique can be used as seen here within the border of the logo. Before we leave the section on blockout work, let's take a look at the back of a World Poker Tour card. Here first is an unmarked version. And now let's toggle to the marked version. Can you spot where the mark is? Well, this is somewhat of a trick question because this card has been marked in 12 different places. As mentioned earlier, cards can be marked in many different places, in many different combinations, and using various systems. However, in our protection tips section, you are going to learn how to detect these type of marks. Cutout work. Cutout work is essentially the scraping away of part of a card's back design to create a mark. The work can be put in using any sharp object like an X-Acto knife, a pin, and even pieces of glass. Here are a few examples with B cards. Do you see how the small blue lines have been cut out to create one straight white line? Here the white diamond has been extended. In essence, it is much like the blockout work you just saw, but this time in reverse. Here part of the blue printed design has been scraped away, creating a white line on the blue printed part of the large diamond. One final example with these bicycle cards should give you an idea of the many different areas of a card this technique can be used on. The card on the right is normal and unmarked. However, the card on the left has been tampered with. Can you spot the cutout work? See the angel on the bicycle? If you look to the left of the angel, you can see lines have been added to the mountains. As you can imagine, cutout work damages the finish of a card. This fact is yet another method by which this type of work can be detected. The finish in the damaged parts of the card will seem dull if looked at an angle. Though rare, if you only have one card which you know to be altered, but are having trouble finding the mark, you might try using a jeweler's loupe to check the back for damage. Protection tips. There are a few ways to test for the types of marked cards we have been looking at. The most common and best way is to apply what is known as the riffle test. This is where the cards are sprung off your thumb as you see here, much like a flip book. When flipping through the cards, concentrate on one specific area at a time. If you see the back design dance or move like a flip book, then you know the cards are marked. Remember to do this with all 4 sides of the deck. Again, please keep in mind that the cards used here are for illustration purposes only, and unless otherwise noted, are a severe exaggeration. It may be that only a few of the cards in the entire deck are marked, and marked in places you would not think to look. It may also be that two different types of marks are used on the same deck. Chances are the marks will be harder to detect simply because they will be far more subtle, a sign that a professional or sophisticated cheat is at hand. Luminous readers. Luminous readers are created by applying an emerald green ink onto the backs of red cards. A ruby red filter is used to see the marks. By using the red filter, the marks appear to be dark gray. However, without the filter and to the untrained eye, the cards look normal and the marks cannot be seen. This type of work dates back to the 1800s and can even be found in the old gambling catalogs dating back to the early 1900s. The way the process works is simple and fascinating. The red filter blocks the green and allows the red to pass. Since the areas that are marked have been covered by the green, they appear as gray areas when looking through a red filter. The most sophisticated luminous marks target only the red parts of the card and are extremely subtle, even to the trained eye. Here we have a card that has a luminous mark, though the mark is invisible to the naked eye. When we add a red filter and take just a second to let your eyes adjust to the redness, the large J is easy to see on the back of the card. Luminous marks can be placed on the back of the cards using ink, daub, and even pencils. When the cards are being made up, the cheat typically wears a pair of red glasses to ensure the cards are marked accurately and cleanly. During a game, the cheat wears red tinted glasses in order to see the marks. To be even more clandestine, luminous contact lenses can also be used. Any pair of sunglasses can be made up to read this type of work yet still look ordinary and have no red tint to them. After all, even the slightest bit of suspicion is the enemy of the card hustler. Here is an example using a pair of classic Ray-Ban aviators. This particular pair were custom made for an advantage player. Many so-called experts think of luminous readers as a rank and amateur cheating method. They associate it with a children's prize one might pull out of a Cracker Jacks box. Don't make that mistake. The concept of luminous readers can be taken to very sophisticated levels. Protection tips. The first tip-off that luminous readers are being used will be that the cards are always red. The second tip-off is that a player or other players are wearing sunglasses or contact lenses. The only way to detect a well-marked deck of luminous readers is to look at the cards underneath a ruby red filter or through red glasses. Be warned, though, if the marks are made by a professional, spotting them will be very difficult, especially to the untrained eye. Cheats practice for months, learning to read faint and barely noticeable marks. Here is an example of a professional luminous mark. The mark is so faint as to defy detection. Can you see it? If we highlight the area, it might make it easier. Now let's take the highlight away and look again. You should be able to make it out now. There is one other luminous color combination. Yellow ink can be applied to a blue card and a blue filter used to read the marks. Like the classic luminous, the blue is allowed to pass through, but the yellow is stopped, making it stand out. This type of work is inferior to the classic luminous and is only included for completeness. Sunlight sorts. Sunlight sorts are essentially cards whose back coloring does not match. Originally, this type of marking system was discovered much as the name indicates. A few cards had been left out on a windowsill, and a card hustler happened to notice that when these cards were placed back with the rest of the deck, that the color on the backs of the exposed cards had faded. Apparently, exposure to the sun had caused the discrepancy. This same method can be used to create sorts today. However, with different die lots, just buying cards from one store and mixing them with cards from another location can sometimes create these types of marks. By taking the high cards from one deck and mixing them with the low cards from another deck, we would in essence have a deck whose relative values would be discernible by the difference of their back color. If you look carefully at the video, you can see a very slight color difference between the cards. To a cheat, This stands out like a sore thumb, but if you don't know what you're looking for, these slight color variations will go unnoticed. Here are two decks of cards. On the left is a deck of normal cards whose back color does match, and on the right the deck of sunlight sorts you just saw. If you were unable to see the color discrepancies a moment ago, this comparison should make it easier. In person and at first glance, you may not be able to see the slight difference in color, but if you deal with cards on a daily basis, this difference in color is immediately noticeable. When the cards are spread out for inspection in a casino, the backs are checked not only for printing blemishes, but also for color discrepancies, and now you know why. Protection tips. If you suspect that the cards you are using are sorts or faded, spread the entire deck out and look for color variances between the backs. It's best to do it in a room with subdued lighting, as bright light will make it harder to see the difference in color. Marking cards during play. Crimping. Crimping is the act of putting a small bend in a card or cards. The following video illustrates this. Though exaggerated, this gives you an idea of how quickly the work can be put in. The bends or crimps, like the enlarged diamonds we looked at in the blockout work segment, are placed in descending order down the side of the card to denote its value. Here is an example of a card that has been crimped. As you can see, the crimp can be so subtle as to defy detection. Top cheats can read the identity of a card from across the table by looking at the difference in the shadow the crimped card casts on the table. Crimped cards can also be read by a cheat with a side view of the deck. Here we see a photo of a crimped card within the deck. Imagine you were a cheater and you knew the identity of this card. As the cards are being dealt, it would be easy to follow the card as it came to the top of the deck and eventually went to a player. Not only would you know what card was dealt, but you would know which player got it. Detection tips. To detect cards marked by crimping, square them up without pressing down on the top of the deck and take a look at the sides. The crimped cards will stand out. These crimps are exaggerated, and the deck is full of them. A professional's crimp will be far more subtle. Using the fall test will also expose the use of crimped cards. Place them on the table, holding them together lightly, and let the cards fall apart. If the cards keep opening at the same places, there may be foul play. One other method is to look at the cards individually at eye level. If the shine on the card seems to change, then the card may be crimped. Remember that paper cards get beat up naturally during play due to players bending the corners to peek at their cards. Because of this, keep in mind that not every bend in the cards is the sign of a hustler. Nail nicking. Nail nicking is much like crimping, but instead of bending the card, the nail is used to dent or slightly nick the side of the card, thereby marking it. As you can see, under the guise of looking at the hand, the action of nicking the card happens in a split second. The same marking systems that apply to crimping also apply to nail nicking, in that the cards are nicked in a known order. Here is a photo of a nail-nicked card. As you can see, the work is so subtle as to defy detection. Here the nail-nicked card has been photographed next to a normal card. Again, please note the tiny difference. Applying and reading this type of work, like crimping, is an art. Protection tips. Square up the cards and hold them so that you can see the sides. Squeeze the deck like you see in the photo. This is known as the squeeze test. As you can see, the card that is nicked sticks out like a sore thumb. Nail nicks also show up better when the cards have been in use for a long time. If the cards are dirty, nicking them refreshes the white hidden under the dirt. You can also use the bevel test as seen here. If you are up against a professional, the nail nicks will not be so exaggerated. Rather, they will look like natural imperfections in the cards, or where the cards may have been bumped rather than crudely nicked. Remember that paper cards get beat up naturally in play due to players using their fingers and nails to lift up the cards to peek at them, so not every nick in the cards means a cheater is operating in your game. Let's conclude the section on marked cards by quickly reviewing the various types of paper you are likely to run across. First, you learn the many ways in which blockout work can be used to mark cards. as well as the many areas that can be marked, the marking systems, and the different names for various types of work such as scroll, humps, and dot. You also learned about cutout work and how it is similar and different to blockout work. And you learned about the riffle test and how to use it to detect these type of marked cards. We then went on to luminous readers. You now know that this type of marking system is still being used today. You know that luminous readers are made by applying an emerald green ink to the backs of red cards, and that ruby red tinted glasses, filters, and contact lenses are used to read and detect this type of work. In addition, you have seen how subtle and truly clandestine a professional's mark can be. You are now familiar with how using just the sun's rays, specific cards can be literally bleached and made to stand out from the rest of the cards in a pack. If you suspect these cards are being used in your game, you know to spread these cards out in a dimly lit room and look carefully in order to detect the slight shade variances. Finally, you know about crimping and nail nicking and how these two methods can be used to mark cards during a game. You also know about the fall test, the bevel test, the squeeze test, and how to spot these cards by looking at the side of the deck. You also know that sometimes crimps can be so subtle that the only tip-offs may be the shift in the glare coming off the back, or a difference in the shadow the card casts on the table. You've also seen firsthand how fast a card can be nail-nicked and how tiny the marks can truly be. Strippers are cards whose long or short sides have been recut so as to make specific cards either larger or smaller than the other cards in the deck. This is an exaggeration of what are known as belly strippers. These wider cards can be pulled out of the deck and controlled during the shuffle. First, a particular combination of cards is selected. In our example, it's the 4 aces. The sides of the aces are cut at an angle that makes them taper from the center, creating an imperceptible belly in the center of each card. The corners are then re-rounded. Finally, all the other cards are cut straight, but narrower, and the corners also rounded. When the aces are placed into the rest of the deck, the sides of the aces protrude from the side of the deck, allowing the cheat to strip them out at will. It is not above the professional card hustler to use strippers. However, like marked cards, the cutting of a professional set of strippers is so subtle that detection is very difficult. In fact, on the professional level, hours of practice are necessary in order to be able to do what is known as pulling the cards. For the hustler on the road, stripper machines have been invented that allow him to make a set of cards in just a few seconds, no matter where he might be. The cards are quickly placed in the machine, locked down, and the sides sanded. This is repeated with the other side, and the set of strippers are ready. This type of stripper is called an N stripper, as in negative, and it is used exclusively by professionals. Here is a photo of 2 different types of stripped cards. The ace on the left is a concave or in stripper. As you can see, the long sides curve inward. The card on the right is a belly stripper, as its sides bow out like a fat man's stomach. Detection tips. Strippers can be detected by placing your thumb and middle fingers around the sides of the deck and sweeping your fingers outward while pulling on the cards. If the cards are strippers, you will be able to consistently pull out specific cards. It is also very difficult to perfectly cut a deck of cards, especially by hand, so that each and every one is straight. A careful look at the side of the deck or the corners will many times easily detect this type of work. Here is a very close look at the corner of a crudely stripped deck. Here are 2 different photos of various types of strippers. The first is a finely cut belly stripper, and the second, a deck of commercially cut in strippers. One final way to check a deck for strippers is to place the suspect deck on one of its long sides, as you see in the photo. By shining a light from one side, it will cause any card that is not the same size to cast a tiny shadow. The light will also make the cut cards stand out. If you see any card sticking out of the side, either in the center or on the sides, you'll know you're onto a deck of strippers. Now that you know about marked cards, let's closely examine what a new deck of cards looks like when it comes from the factory. By becoming familiar with the order of the cards, the way they're placed in the box, the orientation of the joker and the advertising cards, as well as the box itself, including the seal and the cellophane, you will easily be able to spot any discrepancies. Many times, proper inspection of the cards can lead to discovering a problem before your bankroll gets involved. Of all the sections on this DVD, I feel this is one of the most important, so please pay careful attention. If you are given a deck of cards that is supposedly new, would you be able to tell if the cards have been tampered with? In a moment you will. Fortunately, it is difficult for the average person to break into a deck without it being noticeable. A new deck of cards should be wrapped in cellophane. The cellophane should be placed on the box in such a way that it is sealed on two sides, the long edge on one side and the bottom of the card box on the other. The way the cellophane is folded and sealed makes it impossible to cleanly remove and replace the cards without opening both the side and the bottom of the cellophane. It used to be that the cellophane was only sealed on the bottom. However, this relatively new change in packaging makes tampering with the cards far more difficult, but not impossible. Make sure that the cellophane is indeed sealed on the bottom and side, and carefully examine where it has been sealed. Make sure there is no glue or tape holding the cellophane together. There should be no evidence of any entry at all. The fold should be clean, and you should be able to see clearly through even the folded parts of the cellophane. If you find that the box is sealed only on the bottom, it more than likely means the cellophane has been replaced. However, don't assume that if the cellophane is intact, that the cards have not been tampered with. Next, look at the band or strip that you pull to open the cellophane. Is it intact? If using B cards, does it have the B name printed all over it? Or if using another deck manufactured by the U.S. playing card company such as Bicycle, it too should have the Bicycle card or brand name printed on the strip. Check to make sure it is integrated into the cellophane. If it is not, or loose, it may be that the cellophane has been tampered with. If everything seems in order, slowly peel back the band. If it is integrated into the cellophane, it should unravel smoothly and evenly without having to pull too hard. Next, inspect the box seal carefully, making sure it has not been removed and then replaced. If it is easy to peel back the seal from any corner, the cards may have been tampered with as well. It is also reasonable to expect different weather conditions to have different effects on how the seal sticks to the box. Sometimes the deck may already be out of the cellophane. If so, carefully inspect all corners of the seal, particularly the two on top of the box. If the seal has been tampered with, you will notice a discrepancy no matter how carefully the work has been done. However, don't be fooled into thinking the cards are okay if the seal is in perfect condition. As you may have guessed, the seals can also be duplicated. The cheat discards the old seal and replaces it with a brand new one. The two discrepancies you may find are in the feel and look of a legitimate seal when compared to the fake. The fakes tend to be thinner and not as well printed. They are also a bit shinier than the legitimate seals. Still, it may be that a hustler has gone to great lengths to exactly duplicate the seal. Even if the seal is perfect, this still does not guarantee that the cards have not been tampered with. Once you have inspected the seal, you should check the card box itself. Check the sides where the box has been glued together at the factory. As you can see, it's very easy to get into a card box from the side. The hustler doesn't even need to go near the seal. However, like the seal, once the side of the box has been tampered with, it's never the same as when it came from the factory. Here is a photo of two card boxes together. One has been tampered with, and the other has not. When inspecting the outside of the box, look for glue residue or for a natural peeling back of the box itself. When something is re-glued, because it was pulled apart, it tends not to sit flat like it did when it was new. You may be able to spot this discrepancy by comparing both sides of the box. If one seems a bit thicker or not solidly attached, you might be holding a card box that has been previously opened. You may also be able to spot the tampering by looking at the printing on the sides of the box. Sometimes, because the box has been handled so much, you may find a smearing of the ink from the box itself. The box may also seem a bit dirtier on one side than the other. Make sure the printing on the box is well done and not blurry or off color. There are decks of factory-marked cards that are coming out of China which are decent duplicates, but upon less than careful inspection, their pedigree is immediately called into question. It's easy to spot these decks because they are cheaply made and mass-produced, so you might be opening a brand new deck of cards which was marked and sealed at the factory. Cards are printed, cut, assembled, and placed into the card box by the manufacturer with a specific orientation. It's important to know this orientation. Since most people will be using cards manufactured by the U.S. Playing Card Company, we will take a specific look at how this manufacturer of Bee and Bicycle, as well as many other brands of cards, assembles and packs its merchandise. Upon opening the box with the seal side facing you, the cards will come out of the box either upside down or in some cases right side up. You establish this right side up or upside down orientation by looking at the jokers and the ace of spades. It is important to note that no matter how the cards come out of the box, all of them should have the same orientation and be facing the same way. Typically on the face, you will find an advertising card. Underneath that, you will find the first of two jokers. This joker will be the color joker, also known as the non-guarantee joker. Behind that is the ace of spades. Notice the orientation of the non-guarantee joker and the ace of spades. In this example, the deck has come out of the card box upside down. Both the non-guarantee joker and the ace, as well as the other cards, as we will soon see, support this. On the other side, you will find the first card on the back to be either an advertising card or the second joker. In this case, we have an advertising card / calendar, then the black and white joker. The black and white joker is also known as a guarantee joker because of the guarantee printed on it. In some cases, you will find the guarantee joker on top, followed by an advertising card. The ace of hearts follows either the guarantee joker or the advertising card. You will also note that the advertising card, the guarantee joker, and the ace of hearts are also upside down, just like the cards on the face. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Here we have turned the cards right side up and spread them on the table. Please observe that the cards are also in a very specific order that you may not have been aware of. They run from the top down, left to right, ace through king of hearts, ace through king of clubs, then the cards switch and they run king through ace of diamonds, and finally king through ace of spades. So, ace king, then king ace, hearts, clubs, diamonds, and finally spades. Red, black, red, black. When inspecting a new deck, spread the cards like you see in the photo and make sure they are in this specific order. If you open up enough decks, you will eventually get one that has a damaged card. The deck can be returned for a free replacement as per the guarantee. This is a photo of a different deck than the one you saw earlier in the video, and you can see that in this case, the top card is the guarantee joker, followed by an advertising card, then the ace of hearts. So, the top joker or the guarantee joker can either be the first or second card. Also, you may sometimes find two color or two non-guarantee jokers on the face of the deck and no advertising card, followed by the ace of spades. The suit orientation is the next element to look for when inspecting the cards. Look carefully at this photograph of the aces and their mirror images. Do you see how all the suits except the diamond are not symmetrical? This means each suit except the diamonds has a definable top and bottom. As you go through and inspect the new deck, all the suits must be facing the same way. However, even though the spades, clubs, and hearts are non-symmetrical, because of the way the spots are printed, and by virtue of their values, some specific cards have definable tops and bottoms and others do not. Conversely, the diamond suit, though symmetrical, does have one lone card with a definable top and bottom. The non-symmetrical cards are in spades, hearts, and clubs, the ace, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 7 of diamonds. All other cards are symmetrically printed. Watch as I go through each of the cards in this new deck. I'll stop at all the non-symmetrical cards. If the ace of spades points up or is right side up, all the other cards must face in the same direction. The way we check that is by making sure the cards are right side up due to their non-symmetrical nature. From the face, we see the ace. Now let's stop here at the deuce. Notice that even though the suits have a top and bottom, because there are two spots printed, we cannot tell by looking at the face whether the card is right side up or not. Continuing on as we go through the spades, you see the 3 with the odd pip in the center, the 5 with the same center pip, the 6 with the 2 pips in the middle, the 7 having the same layout as the 6, but with a 3rd pip in the upper part of the card. The 8 has the same layout as the 6, and the same 2 pips give it a top and bottom. The 9, though, has a center pip which gives it a top and bottom. Here we will quickly go through the diamonds, but stop on the 7, the only diamond card that is not symmetrical. Again, the odd pip on this card must be on top if all the other cards are right side up to be correctly oriented. As we go through the clubs and finally the hearts, I'll stop on each card which has a top and bottom. Now that you know exactly what to look for and which cards to zero in on, the next time you open a new deck of cards, you will go through it with a far more discerning eye for the details that fly by literally all but a small fraction of card players. The next thing to look at are the backs of the cards. Turn the deck over and spread it face down on the table. Take a few seconds to look at the backs and make sure there are no printing defects or discrepancies. Keeping in mind from the marked card section that subtle color differences can make a not-so-subtle dent in your bankroll. You may at this point want to conduct one more test with the cards, and that is to bevel them face down and look for any discrepancies. A brand new deck with an all-over back design in which all the cards came from the same sheet is cut in such a way that all of the cut lines form a uniform design down the side of the deck. The deck should also be given a half turn and the other side inspected as well. Because of the way the back design is printed and cut, each card from the back typically has a definable top and bottom. That means if the cards do not match up with the bevel test from a brand new deck, that something is wrong. If a few of the cards are off, try rotating them 180 degrees and see if they line up. If you are putting a deck together that has been in use, it may take some rearranging to get the lines to match up. If you don't succeed, this may mean there is foul play. Finally, you should, if need be, inspect the inside of the box. This can be done as you pull the cards out or afterwards. Look inside for glue residue and any telltale signs of entry. I know many of you think this is overkill, but it is information that one day may save you a lot of money. Protection tips. 1. Remember to check the cellophane. 2. Check the band and make sure there's been no tampering. 3. Look at the seal and the sides of the card box. 4. When pulling the cards out, check for proper orientation. 5. Check the backs for printing errors and color variances. 6. Bevel the deck on both ends and check for a uniform cut design. 7. If the deck has been in use, you will have to recreate the new order to inspect it. 8. Finally, if need be, check the inside of the box. After viewing this section as well as the marked cards and stripper sections, you now know more about cards, legal or otherwise, than 99% of all professional casino dealers, floor personnel, pit, and shift bosses. Peeking and flashing sound dirty, don't they? Well, they are, especially when performed at the card table. In these next two sections, we're going to explore the many ways the identity of a card on top, on bottom, second, third, fourth, and even fifth from the top of the deck can be gleaned. The cheating moves fit right in with the actions of the game, and unless you know exactly what to look for, these moves can be worked while you watch. There are no marked cards to discover, and the moves are over in under a second. Here, knowledge is your only protection. Knowing the identity of a card before it is dealt, or just knowing it will not come into play, can be a huge advantage. For example, if you know that the river card is not going to be the spade you need to make your flush, you would fold, knowing you'd save the money you would have bet on the last round. The reciprocal is also true. This information alone is priceless in the game of Hold'em. However, when used in conjunction with second dealing, to be discussed next, and bottom dealing, to be discussed in part 2 of our series, the results can be devastating. Peeking and flashing are executed within the context and actions of the game, and it's this naturalness which gives these maneuvers their invisibility and camouflage. We'll start by taking a look at peeking the top card from the dealer's perspective. Because of where the card's indices are printed, the bubble peek is a quick and easy-to-master maneuver which reveals the identity of the top card. The heel peek is used to spot the indice in the lower left-hand corner. This is done under cover of the left hand moving forward. This technique can also be used to peek the second card from the top of the deck. The turnover peek is another method used to spot the top card's identity, as the hand naturally turns over on the table to count chips or reach for a drink. Sometimes it is advantageous to spot the third or fourth card from the top. That is where the fan peek comes in. Though not typically used, it is interesting to see how far methods for peeking multiple cards can be taken. Sometimes the bottom card of the deck can be peeked right after the cut as it is picked up for the deal. This is called the revolve peek. As the cards are placed in the hand, a brief look at the bottom card is all that is needed. The players sitting in the 1 and 2 seats can also be flashed the identity of the bottom card. This bottom peek is a classic. The deck is held horizontal to the table, yet the cheater is able to see the bottom card with a natural squaring motion of the deck. This peek is known as the cut peek. After the shuffle and during the cutting action, the bottom card is peeked. It's a versatile peek in that it can be executed by the dealer for the benefit of another player or himself. And if the person to the right of the dealer cuts the cards, he can flash the identity of the bottom card to the dealer. Peeking for left-handed dealers. Left-handed dealers hold the cards in their right hand. Because the pips of the cards are printed in the lower left-hand corner and upper right-hand corner, lefties have to use different methods for peeking cards. The pinky pull-down peek is executed by having the pinky of the right hand pull down on the lower left-hand corner of the card, thereby exposing its value. Left-handed dealers also employ a variation of the turnover peek. Instead of turning over the hand and peeking the indice on the lower right, they turn over the deck and slide the top card over with the thumb to peek the top indice on the left. Protection tips. 1. Make sure the deck stays horizontal to the table and is not turned over. 2. Toying with the cards should not be permitted. 3. In between rounds, the cards should be put flat and squarely on the table and not touched. 4. Always use a cut card. As you will soon see, that does not solve all problems, but it does make executing some of these maneuvers far more difficult. Flashing top cards. Instead of the dealer peeking cards, he can flash them to a confederate at the table. It makes no difference where the cheat sits, as there are numerous maneuvers that can be employed. Timing is the most important factor here. Flashing the top and second card from the top to an accomplice at the table can create a tremendous edge. Before the flop, the accomplice knows what the burn card is and what one of the flop cards will be. This maneuver can also be worked on the turn and river cards. As they say in the cheating subculture, it doesn't get any stronger than that. Flashing can be employed to reveal the bottom card to an accomplice on purpose, as we see here. If you remember the revolve peek, this technique, as mentioned earlier, can also be used to flash the bottom card to a confederate in the number 1 or number 2 seat. A player just being able to see the bottom card of the deck, due to the sloppy and careless way the dealer handles the cards, can enjoy an unfair advantage as well. Cut cards. As mentioned in the previous protection tips, using a cut card is a smart practice that will go a long way toward keeping your game safe and honest. But don't think for a moment that the use of a cut card eliminates peeking and flashing. Peeking with the cut card. Here we see the bottom peek executed with the cut card actually staying on a horizontal plane with the deck. The action is over in less than a second, and a regulation opaque cut card is in use. Here, the dealer moves the cut card to the side to give his accomplice in the number 3 seat a quick look at the bottom card. The cut card is then replaced back on the bottom quickly, neatly, and efficiently, as if nothing ever happened. It is also possible to use a bridge size or plastic card size cut card in conjunction with a regular poker size deck and use this discrepancy to gain an advantage. Most players never notice the difference in size. Due to the skinnier nature of the cut card, an accomplice can easily see the identity of the bottom card as the dealer flashes to the number 1 seat. The dealer is also able to peek the bottom card by slightly pulling up the back of the deck. Using a bridge-size cut card with a poker-size deck can also facilitate bottom dealing, something you may not have thought possible with a cut card in place. Finally, here we see a regulation-size cut card used with a poker-size deck. However, in this case, the cut card is not opaque. Rather, the black cards can be seen right through the cut card. No need to move the cut card aside, no need to use a smaller card. Just being observant is enough. Though these last few techniques have been used to illustrate what it looks like when the dealer flashes cards to an accomplice, the same techniques can also be used by the dealer to peek the bottom card himself. Protection tips. 1. Always be wary of any dealer fiddling or fidgeting with the cards. 2. Make sure the deck is held in a horizontal plane and not tipped up or down. 3. Remember, the most vulnerable time for peeking is right after the deal while everyone looks at their cards. 4. Be alert when the dealer is counting out money, when the deck is being picked up or set down, and directly after the shuffle and cut. 5. Finally, make sure that you do use a cut card that is the correct size and is opaque as well. You cannot eradicate peeking and flashing, but taking these precautions can eliminate a lot of it. Remember that many of these techniques you have seen have been exaggerated. In actual practice, they are far more subtle, deceptive, and quick. A false deal is defined as dealing the cards in any manner which is not fair. As you can imagine, the second deal falls very nicely into that category. The second deal is exactly what its name implies. Rather than dealing the top card, the cheater deals the second card from the top. The act of dealing a second is known as dealing a deuce or dealing a 2, and the person who does this is a number 2 man. The card cheat needs to know the identity of the top card or card second from the top in order to profitably use second dealing. That's why the second deal is always used in conjunction with marked cards, peeking, and or flashing. In the following exposé, the ace of spades is on top of the deck. The cards being dealt are all seconds. Remember, as you watch, you know what is happening. Though it seems impossible for any other card except the top card to be coming off the deck, nothing could be further from the truth. Here the action is exposed with the ace face up on top of the deck. As you can see, it looks as if the cards below the ace literally melt through the top card as they are being dealt. Here we see the second deal executed stud style with 2 hands. The variations on this crooked dealing technique are numerous. They mimic the exact actions of a regular stud deal, and to the player who is unaware, this deal can be devastating. The second deal can also be executed with 1 hand. Though it would be odd to see it at the poker table, don't discount this disarming and innocent-seeming way of dealing the cards. The one-handed second can just as easily be executed in stud fashion as it can be face down. For our first scenario, the cheater is using marked cards. In order to expose the action, I've marked all the 10s, jacks, queens, kings, and aces with a large black X. As you know from the marked card sections, the actual marks would be microscopic. Using the second deal, the dealer in this scenario is going to receive 2 kings. Let's run the video at regular speed first. Now let's slow everything down and take a closer look at the action. The cards are shuffled, cut, and dealt. The game is 8-handed. The top card happens to be a large value card, and so it is held back and seconds are dealt. 7 seconds are dealt and the top card is steered into the dealer's hand. On the second round, the dealer is not lucky enough to immediately catch a high card to hold back. The second round finds the cheat dealing fairly until he sees a high card which appears after 4 cards have been dealt. From then on, he deals seconds until he reaches his hand. Sure enough, he manages to catch a pair of kings. Scenario number 2, flopping a set. The dealer is working in conjunction with a confederate in the number 7 seat. The cards are once again marked. The dealer using the second deal will deal his accomplice 2 high cards which end up being aces. He then uses the second deal to steer the high card on top of the deck into the flop. It ends up being a third ace. Using the second deal on both the turn and river, the dealer tries to better the hand. Let's run the video at full speed. Now let's slow everything down and take a closer look at the action. As you can see, the first card is dealt fairly. The second card ends up being a high card, so the cheat holds it back by dealing seconds until he reaches his accomplice, again in the number 7 seat. The known high card is dealt fairly. Now the process of looking for another high card begins. If all the high cards are marked and 8 people are in the game, it's relatively easy to find another high card and steer it into the confederate's hand. In this scenario, the cheat had to deal 3 additional cards, one to himself, the first player, and the man in the number 2 seat before another high card made an appearance. Once again, the dealer deals seconds, steering the big card into his friend's hand. The accomplice gets lucky and catches 2 aces, the best starting hand in Hold'em, and comes out raising. However, as is many times the case, the flop can take a hand like 2 aces and destroy it. We see after the initial deal that there is a high card on top of the deck. The dealer steers that big card into the flop. He does this by dealing a second as the burn card, and then he deals the next 3 cards fairly. As luck would have it, our man in the number 7 seat flops a set. All the cheats can hope for now is that another player has the 4th ace and starts raising. Scenario number 3, straight with a flash to the number 6 seat. 2 cheats are working together yet again, the dealer and the player in the number 6 seat. This time the cards are unmarked. The cards are shuffled and dealt fairly. Our man in the number 6 seat catches a Jack-9 unsuited, a marginal hand at best, especially with a full table. Before we see the flop, the dealer flashes the second card from the top to his accomplice. Our man sees this as a queen. Knowing it will help him, he decides to stay in and see the rest of the flop. The flop comes and he gets the queen as expected, but also catches an 8. The dealer once again flashes him the top 2 cards. None of them will help, and he signals the dealer to deal a second on 4th Street. The 6 is burned fairly, then a second is dealt in hopes of catching a better card. Sure enough, the team manages to catch a 10 to complete the straight. The river card is dealt fairly, and if the team catches a king to make a higher straight, all the better. In this case, it does not happen, but the cheaters are literally a lock to win the pot. Is someone dealing seconds in your game? Here are some additional protection tips. Always remember, if you suspect someone of dealing seconds, they have to be dealing to some sort of information. This means the cards are either marked or peeking, and in some instances, flashing and receiving signals is taking place. Though it's all over the literature on crooked gambling, the different sound the second deal makes and the different way a mechanic holds the cards are all fairy tales. Yes, the deal does sound different if you know what to listen for, but the ambient noise always covers this discrepancy. Also, each person holds the cards a little differently, and how anyone holds the cards has no bearing on whether they're going to deal fairly or crookedly. Crooked dealing can be accomplished with the deck held in almost any position. If you suspect anyone of cheating in a game, the best thing to do is leave the game. Many scams are interrelated and dependent upon one another for success. The second deal is a great example. You know that a hustler employing the second deal must either be using marked cards or peeking. If the cheat is working with a confederate, the dealer may also be flashing cards to his accomplice. The point is, it takes far more than knowledge of a particular cheating method to hustle a card game successfully. A hustler will have mastered a few different maneuvers that are used in conjunction with each other. Remember, 99% of the time, cheats work in teams. These facts might actually make it easier for you to spot the hustler and/or cheaters and protect yourself. That being said, if you suspect you are being cheated, rather than trying to take countermeasures, it's best to just leave the game. Though considered an amateur cheating method, check copying or stealing chips cheats the winner of a pot out of a percentage of his winnings. In the worst hands, it's a rough and crude hustling maneuver, but in the professional's hands, it borders on artwork. The subtlety and seemingly innocent actions that accompany it can be truly deceiving. The person on the left pushing the chips to the right of your screen has just lost the pot. He is pushing the chips to the winner. However, in the process of helping the winner collect his chips, the cheat steals one back. Let's look at the action one more time. As the hands approach the pot, the hustler immediately places his hands on the pile in such a way as to make sure a chip goes into his palm. The fingers then spread and push the chips in the direction of the winner. The way his fingers are left open says loud and clear everything is fair and above board. Let's look at that one more time in slow motion. Stealing one chip may not seem like such a big deal. However, consistently doing it pot after pot and game after game adds up to a lot of money during the course of a playing career. Some hustlers even use what is known as check cop, a sticky substance placed on the palm to help chips stick to the hand. Protection tips. 1. Allowing players to put their hands in the pot for any reason is a recipe for disaster. 2. The winner of a pot should be the only one to rake in the chips without assistance from opponents. 3. The person dealing and running the game should be the only one allowed to put chips into the pot and count change out of the pot. All transactions should be done openly. One of the most important elements for cheating at any game are what are known as splash moves. Hustlers call it building in. For example, let's say the cheat wants to peek the identity of the card on the bottom of the deck during a cut. What he'll do is he'll build the move in. This means he will mimic the actions of the maneuver but play fairly. If someone calls him on it or arouses any suspicion, there's no foul play. Once all of the actions are accepted as normal, the cheating can begin, and no one will be the wiser. If you were playing in a friendly game and saw the following actions, would you say or do anything? Here we see the chips being pushed to the obvious winner of the pot. Though we discussed it earlier in the section on check copying, would you have said anything had you not watched this DVD? How about a different scenario? Look at the way the cards are being dealt. Though it's not exactly normal, would these actions have caused you any concern? What about the way these cards are shuffled and cut? If anything seemed out of place, what would you do? Though nothing is happening, that is exactly the point. Cheats build in moves, as explained earlier, by mimicking actions they will use later to cheat you. Once you are accustomed to these actions and accept them as a particular style or signature of a player, they are set. The fact is, no hustler is going to make a move while you scrutinize him, but establishing actions and patterns are a big part of his modus operandi. Building in with splash moves can be curtailed to a certain extent. Here are some protection tips to help you do that. 1. If someone is doing something you know is not right, like touching the chips, point it out right then and there. 2. send a clear message that you expect the game to be conducted in a fair manner. Will this stop all cheating from taking place? Nothing will. However, you will have established at the outset that you are observant and expect to maintain a certain amount of decorum. If there are cheaters in the game, that alone might be good enough to cause them to seek what is known as a softer spot. In just a moment, you're going to realize that cheats will go to any length to take the advantage. Some will even resort to using mechanical devices. The devices you're about to see are all in use today. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that these devices could work their way into your game in one form or another, so be on the lookout. Bugs are devices used to hold a card out of play. They are made out of various different types of materials, typically metal. Bugs may be placed under the table, like in this exposé. The bug in the video has been placed close to the edge of the table so that you are easily able to see the switch take place. Normally, it would be placed further in so that the card does not stick out. These two photos show the placement under the table and illustrate the adding of a card to the hand. With the bug in place, cards can be held out during the game and switched in when needed by the hustler. By giving this bug a quarter turn, it is capable of holding out two different cards simultaneously. More often than not, bugs are worn on the cheater's person and used to make stealing and adding cards to the hand easier and more deceptive. A shiner is a small reflective device, typically a mirror, used to peek the identity of a card. This peeking may be done during the deal or after the deal prior to setting down the deck. As you can see from the photo, shiners have also been built into stacks of chips. Though more of a novelty item than an actual device a cheat would use, it illustrates the thinking and the ingenuity that goes into creating these devices. A shiner can be literally anything that is reflective. Even a cell phone on the table can act as a shiner. One of the best shiners is a black cup of coffee. Its reflective qualities are excellent, as you can see. Shiners that are small mirrors are typically secured in the cheater's hand. Most of the time you will see them at the base of the palm, though there are other areas where they can be placed and kept concealed. In certain instances, hustlers have even used their cufflinks as shiners. A shiner may also be called a glim or a light. The professional uses the shiner to hone in on a specific player's hand, peeking one or two cards during a round at most. Moreover, his moves and methods are so well practiced that catching him in the act is virtually impossible. However, no hustler is going to cheat while being watched, no matter how perfect his moves or sleight of hand. Our final device is a holdout machine. In all the history books, videotapes, DVDs, and TV programs prior to this one that mention this device, it is mistakenly referred to by the ersatz experts as a Keplinger holdout. No examples of the Keplinger holdout exist. The Keplinger faded into oblivion because of a change in fashion. The more modern designs in clothing made the Keplinger impractical, and it soon became extinct. Its successor is the Martin holdout, which you see here. The Martin holdout is a very clever and complicated device used to switch cards in and out of a cheater's hand. The holdout is strapped to the forearm and is worn under a dress shirt. A wire encased in a metal tubing runs under the sleeve and up to the armpit. There, the wire runs down the side of the body and onto the inner side of the thigh. A steel rod is held in place by two straps. The end of the holdout is threaded onto the rod, which lets the holdout move back and forth on the rod itself, thereby allowing the hustler to stand up and sit down at will while keeping the machine in place. The straps, rod, and string are worn beneath the clothing and are placed directly under the inside seam of the trousers. The end of the wire has a small loop. A hole slightly larger than the loop is cut into the seam of the pants. On the right leg, in the same position, also held in place with a strap, is a small hook. A hole is also cut in the seam of the pants so as to let the hook through. Under the table during a game, the cheat pulls the loop out of the left pant leg and attaches it to the hook on the right leg. When the legs are pulled apart, it causes the holdout strapped to the arm to go in and out of the sleeve, delivering a card or cards to the cheater's hand. Knowing about the various devices that have been manufactured to cheat honest players is one of the first steps towards detection. Protection tips. Bugs. 1. The majority of bugs are worn on the person and are difficult, if not impossible, for the average person to detect. 2. Make sure that players are not allowed to lift their cards off the table. This may not stop this type of cheating, but it will curtail it to a large degree. 3. If you suspect someone of using a bug under the table, it's a simple matter to just look. 4. Any fidgeting or fiddling with the hands or fingers at the edge of the table is a sure sign. However, if you run across a professional using this device, the movements will be smooth and literally invisible. Shiners. Number 1. Be aware of drinks and chips and other devices on the table, such as cell phones. Make sure that any and all unnecessary items are off the table. 2. If using a center dealer, make sure the shuffling and dealing areas are also clean and free of items not normally found on the poker table. Though common, drinks should be kept off the table. Martin holdout. 1. The likelihood of you running into a gambler using the Martin holdout is slim to none, though I know for a fact it is still in use as of 2005. 2. Using the holdout under fire takes nerves of steel, and to my knowledge, those that did use this device in the past were typically heroin addicts. 3. When used by a professional, like all cheating devices, its use defies detection. You can literally stare at the work being done and see nothing. 4. As with the bug, your best protection is not letting the cards come off the table. 5. Also, as with all devices, and more so with the holdout than any other mentioned here, if a cheat is caught with it on his person, there is no denying his intentions. You will perhaps never see a device like this in person, let alone sit across from someone using it against you, but the possibility does exist. The science of the shuffle is fascinating. In any game played with cards, proper shuffling, cutting, and dealing is essential. So much so that every casino has their own procedures. Their shuffles must be safe, fast, and effective. You too can and should learn how to optimally shuffle, cut, and deal. The process is very easy, as there are only 5 elements: the scramble or the wash, the box, the riffle, the strip, and the cut. We're going to take a look at each of these elements and then put them together. If there's any segment on this DVD that I feel is worth the entire purchase price, this is the segment. Proper shuffling. The scramble or wash. In baccarat, it's known as washing the cards, and in poker, it's known as the scramble. Either way, the idea behind the scramble is to randomize the cards before the actual shuffling. The cards are placed in the center of the shuffling area, and with both hands moving in a circular motion, the order of the cards is quickly randomized. Protection tips. Make sure all the cards are scrambled and no cards are left to the side. If cards are dropped, make sure they are replaced randomly as well. When the dealer picks up the cards to put them back together, make sure he cannot see the faces of the cards as he reassembles the deck. The cards should be put together with the faces away from the dealer. The box. The box is basically a cut of the cards. However, instead of cutting the cards in the center, we will define the box as cutting the top third of the deck and putting it on the bottom. Protection tips. To ensure the cards are boxed correctly, make sure that you do not flash the faces of any cards while performing the boxing action. In all boxing actions, no one in any seat should be able to see any of the cards' faces. Make the box quick, neat, and low to the table. The riffle. The riffle is the actual shuffling of the cards. The deck is placed on the table with the long side toward the dealer. The top half is picked up with the right hand and placed to the right. The cards are then shuffled into each other, making sure that the top and bottom cards change each time the shuffle is made. Protection tips. 1. The riffle should be made softly. 2. The card should not be lifted up too high during the riffling action to allow another player seated next to the dealer or the dealer to see the faces of the cards as they are being shuffled. 3. The shuffle should be smooth and tight. Shuffling the cards like a casino dealer is within the grasp of all card players. In fact, it's easier to learn than the traditional in-the-hand style of shuffling you find in home games. Each half of the deck is grabbed from the top by placing the middle, ring, and pinky fingers along the outside long edge. The index or pointer finger is placed on the cards in the center. The job of these fingers is to solely hold the cards in place. The thumb does all the work. With the thumb, lift up on the long side closest to you and allow the cards to slowly spring off the center. Notice how every finger except the thumb is being used to hold the cards in place. The only digit that does any lifting or springing is the thumb. Let's look at it from your perspective. See how the thumb lifts up the long side of the deck and how the cards spring off the center? Practice doing this with one hand at a time, and after a few minutes with both hands. Then place the corners of the cards together and begin shuffling like a pro. You'll be surprised how easy it is to learn and how little pressure you actually need to apply to the cards. As you become more experienced, your touch will become lighter and lighter. Learning to shuffle this way will take this facet of your poker playing to the professional level. Improper riffling. Notice how the cards are being shuffled in this example. This type of shuffling should not be allowed. Players on both sides can easily see the faces of the cards as they riffle off of the thumbs. The dealer may also use this information to stack the deck during the shuffle. If you spot the dealer shuffling like this, ask him to make his riffles soft, tight, and smooth so no cards are exposed. You should also aim to keep your shuffles closed and smooth as well. The strip. The strip consists of taking small portions of the deck from the top and placing them onto the table. Optimally, there should not be too few strips nor too many. Too few do not mix up the cards enough, and too many also have the same effect. Optimally, aim to give the cards between 4 and 6 strips. Protection tips. When stripping the deck, make sure that you do not inadvertently flash the bottom card of the deck or the faces of the packets being stripped. The stripping action should be smooth, low, and horizontal to the table so as not to expose the faces of any cards. The cut. The cut for our purposes is a straight cut of the cards from the center of the deck. Once the deck has been shuffled, the cut card is placed in front of the deck. Either hand, but only one, comes over and cuts the deck in the middle. The top portion is placed on the cut card and the bottom carried. Protection tips. 1. Make sure the cut is low and horizontal to the table. 2. Make sure the cut is executed briskly. And 3. Make sure you use a cut card that is both the right size and opaque. Improper cutting. Watch the following sequence. The cards are shuffled and then cut onto the cut card. Fair enough? Actually, there is a small problem with this sequence. Notice how after the shuffle the cards are cut, then cut again. This double cutting has the effect of reversing the final cut. If 2 cuts follow each other, the second cutting action is nullified. To ensure this does not happen, always make sure that a straight cut follows a shuffle. Putting the shuffle together. The shuffle you are going to learn, with the exception of the scramble, comes from the blackjack table. It was designed to optimally shuffle the cards, yet still be fast and thorough enough for use in a casino. It is a far better shuffle than you see in regular poker games, even ones executed by professional dealers in card clubs and poker rooms. There are 8 steps to the optimal shuffle. First, the cards are given a brief scramble. Next, give the deck 1 box. Third, riffle shuffle the cards twice. Box once more. Riffle shuffle twice more. Strip the deck. Riffle shuffle 1 final time. And finally, give the deck a square cut. This procedure, if followed, will optimally shuffle the cards in the shortest period of time. Take a few minutes to learn and practice the different elements of the shuffle. I promise you will be glad you did. Teach them to your poker buddies as well. Better yet, buy them a copy of this DVD. Let's go through the proper sequence of the shuffle, one element at a time from the dealer's perspective. First, the cards are given a brief scramble. When putting the deck back together, make sure the dealer does not look at the faces. Next, give the deck a box, cutting the top third of the deck to the bottom. The cards are now given 2 riffle shuffles, making sure both the top and bottom cards change each time. The shuffles should be smooth, tight, and thorough. Give the deck 1 more box. Next, 2 more riffle shuffles as before. Always remember, bottom and top cards change, shuffles are smooth, tight, and thorough. Now strip the cards. Give the deck 1 final riffle. And finally, 1 straight cut from the center using the right size opaque cut card. This is the entire shuffling sequence done at regular speed. With a small amount of practice, you too can shuffle at this level. The scramble takes the longest time to complete, but following that, the rest of the shuffle is quite rapid. The box. 2 riffle shuffles. 1 more box. 2 more riffle shuffles. The strip. 1 last riffle shuffle, and finally the cut. Cutting the deck while you stand. Many times in large private games with a rotating deal, the dealer stands up to deal the cards, especially when the dealer is at the far end of a big table. While standing, he may cut the cards either with his hands or with the cut card and inadvertently expose the new bottom card. If another player uses the cut card to give the deck a cut, he can, with a small amount of practice, also peek the new bottom card. This can be eliminated by following the optimal shuffling guidelines covered just a few moments ago. When a dealer stands up and pitches the cards, problems with the deal can also occur. While dealing, if not careful, the faces of the cards might be flashed to players around the table. If the dealer is a hustler and working in conjunction with another cheat, he may be intentionally flashing other players' cards to his confederate. Don't assume this is only when the dealer stands up to deal. As you can see, these same problems can occur when the dealer is seated. Protection tips. 1. Make sure, just as in shuffling, that the dealing is kept low to the table so that no cards are exposed. 2. You should ask for a redeal if you think someone saw your cards as they were dealt to you. Proper dealing. Many times when the cards have been used for a long time, especially in Hold'em, the edges tend to curl up. When the cards are sailed across the table, air gets under them and sometimes they tend to turn over, especially if dealing from one end of a large table. If the table is large and you are at one end, you might consider dealing like this. The hands are dealt in a row, and once dealt, they are slid to the correct player. This ensures a clean and fair deal. The right to reshuffle. In bigger money games where the deal rotates, players have the right to reshuffle the cards before they are cut and ultimately dealt. The person to the immediate right of the dealer has the right to reshuffle the deck and the right to cut the deck. The dealer has the right to the final shuffle. In this example, the player to the dealer's right chooses to reshuffle not once, but twice. As you can see, the dealer executes the final shuffle, and the player to his right cuts the deck. This shuffling and reshuffling can go back and forth until both parties are satisfied that the cards are well mixed. If the person to the dealer's immediate right passes on the cut by making a knocking motion on the cards, the person to his right inherits the right to reshuffle and ultimately cut. That being said, you should always insist that the cards be cut before being dealt. Properly looking at your hands. When playing Hold'em, you must learn how to properly look at your cards and protect your hand. This becomes even more important when you are forced to sit close to other players. Because of the sloppy way most amateur players look at their cards, anyone who is next to them or standing behind them can almost always get a look at their hand. Here are 3 common ways amateurs look at their cards. Remember, just because you would never knowingly peek at another player's hand does not mean the other player is going to extend you the same courtesy. It takes no more than 30 seconds to properly learn how to look at your hand. Both hands come over the cards. The left thumb bends back the cards, then it peels back the bottom card, enabling you to see the value of your hand. The right and left hands work in tandem, and act as blinders to shade the cards from anyone around or behind you. Many times in soft games, friends who have buddies playing in the game stand behind them and look at their hands while they play. That friend may also be looking at your hand and using that information against you. If you see someone acting this way, it's not a place to be betting your hard-earned money, no matter how friendly the game is. This is a huge exaggeration, but you would be surprised how blatant people can be. Friends peeking. You should not let anyone look at your cards, friend or foe. Showing the cards this way potentially exposes them to other players at the table and teaches your friend how you play. Also, your friend may inadvertently give away the strength of your hand by his reactions and body language. The bottom line is, never show your hand to anyone. If you use regular cards in your game, such as Bee or Bicycle, you may want to consider switching to a plastic card. Plastic cards are expensive, but as you have seen in the sections on peeking at your hand and crimping, they are an investment rather than an expense. Bending back the corners to peek your hand during normal play does not affect the card's playability. No card is immune to marking or manipulation, but the pros outweigh the cons when it comes to playing with these types of cards. They offer longevity, better security, and an ease of handling because of their smaller size. With proper care and maintenance, the cards will last a long time, save you money, and provide you with a return on your investment. What do you do if you suspect someone is cheating in your game? Well, the long and the short answer is cease playing in the game. Unless you can actually prove someone's cheating, making accusations is useless. The top cheats only use sleight of hand, and catching them is very, very difficult. Also, the person that you think is cheating may be working with another person or persons in the game. It's not uncommon for a game to be put together to steal money from only one person. So without knowing your situation or your game, the best answer is to stop playing. That way you won't embarrass yourself, and you can go about your business without losing any more money. So again, if you suspect that someone's cheating in your game, the best thing to do is walk away. A lot of people don't understand it, but most hustlers are world-class players to begin with. That means if they can't cheat, they'll still get your money fairly. Cheating just expedites the process. What you can do is learn how to play cards like a professional. Start with one game, like Limit Hold'em, master it, and then move on to a second game like No Limit, 7 Stud, or even Lowball, whatever happens to be more popular in your area. There are plenty of books and DVDs that you can use, and you can even learn how to play for free on the internet. Thank you for joining us for Cheating at Hold'em The Essentials. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our protection series. Please review the DVD as many times as necessary to familiarize yourself with all of the cheating maneuvers. If you use our protection tips, they'll go a long way to helping ensure your game is fair, safe, and fun. Also remember to review the section on proper shuffling, cutting, and dealing, and remember to always use the cut card. Don't forget to join us for Part 2, Further Scams, and Part 3, Ultimate Scams in our Cheating at Hold'em series. You can also visit us online at www.cheatingathold'em.com for any further information. Thank you, and good luck.